The other thing that gives me hope and optimism are all the amazing people in New Hampshire that are doing community building around creativity. So we mentioned Positive Street Art, Mosaic Art Collective in Manchester, Pillar Art Gallery, the Seesaw Gallery in Manchester. Go to creativeguts.com and look at the list of people on the homepage, and chances are you will see like someone who is just changing the world in New Hampshire. And that's I think just talking to the folks that we talk to really gives me hope. We have interviewed over 120 creatives. Most of them I have become friends with. In my adult life in the last 5 years, I've made 100 new friends. That gives me hope too, because I think it's hard to make connection at a certain point in your life if you're not going out and engaging. And I hear that like, oh, I don't know where to meet friends or find friends. And I think if you have a curious mind, a creative mind, and you just put it out there, you will meet folks.
You are listening to Granite Goodness, the show about optimism, problem solving, and solutions in and around New Hampshire. My name is Andy DeMeo, and today I'll be coming to you from Art Up Front Street in Exeter, New Hampshire, where I am speaking to Laura Harper Lake and Sarah Reitzman, who are the hosts and creators of Creative Guts, a podcast focused on the pursuit of creativity. We talk about why creativity matters or should matter to everybody, what makes New Hampshire an especially creative and unique place, their own forms of artistic expression, and a bunch of other things on this episode of Granite Goodness. I hope you enjoy it. Sarah, Laura, welcome to Granite Goodness.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Or should I say, welcome to using your own equipment and your own studio to film my show. So it's not really like welcome to, like, this is great. So for those of you, listening or watching, this is a beautiful kind of, what do they call it in the industry? A 2-for-1 or it's like some kind of sandwich term.
Interview exchange swap or I don't know what we're doing.
Let's just make up what it's like a double cupcake or something.
A double cupcake.
A double cupcake.
A double vegan cupcake.
A double vegan cupcake. That's what they call it. When,
the best kind, right?
It's
you
the
go.
Official term.
Yeah, you go on somebody's show and then they come on your show.
A swapperoo.
I think actually that's
swapperoo.
It is in fact called a swapperoo.
That's what podcasters call it. You just have to take our word for it.
Yeah. So this is a genuine certified swapperoo, the first that I've ever done, which is really exciting. Just wrapped up you two interviewing me, and I feel like I talked way too much. So now I'm going to try and talk less.
We'll talk way too much if that helps.
No, that's good. That's what we want. That's what we want. So glad to have the two of you here. The moment that I learned about what you're doing and the awesome legacy of Creative Guts, I was like, this is the most Granite Goodnessy thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, I have to do something with these ladies. We have to get cupcakes or maybe even do a swapperoo. So you very generously had me on your show, and now I've got you here as a captive audience, and I'm just excited to talk to you. In your own words, what is Creative Guts?
Creative Guts is a podcast and a nonprofit that explores creativity and hopefully inspires others to be creative as well.
And does it have like a local focus? Like, do you specifically try and talk to people like around
primarily
New Hampshire, New England?
Yeah, and it's kind of more happenstance than anything else in that this is where we're located and we prefer to record in person.
Right.
So if there were some like traveling artist in from wherever, we'd be like, sure, come to Exeter, New Hampshire while you're here and we'll interview you. But we really prefer not to do the Zoom thing, the virtual recording.
Yeah.
So it kind of turned into like a New Hampshire thing, which is really fun.
Yeah, we'll do them here or there if the right opportunity comes along.
Yep.
But yeah, I think, we kind of spoke about this before. There's just such a grand wealth of creativity and positive folks in New Hampshire and our adjacent states to New Hampshire. So we will never be done.
No.
That's wonderful to hear, because often, and people who aren't from here, or even people who are, right? Like, because my show is so like explicitly like New Hampshire focused, and in practice, like it isn't. I talk to Mass people all the time. I'm not even against that. I sometimes even toy with the term of being like Greater New Hampshire. Like, what if instead of calling it New England, it was Greater New Hampshire, right? Like, that'd be kind of a funny thing. But, you know, as someone who on my show focuses like on things that are going right, things to celebrate, things that are great and wonderful about New Hampshire, like culture and art and the creative world is this really interesting place, right? Because like, yeah, you know, there are these great cultural epicenters, you know, of the world, and a lot of them are here in America, of like, you know, Hollywood and, you know, wherever they make TV shows. Like, there's all these things. And when you think of culture, you think of like Brooklyn, all this stuff. You don't necessarily think of New Hampshire, right?
Right.
And your work, I'm excited to promote it and to talk about it because it's like it's just a stunning example of like, actually, look at what we have. We have all these amazing, really brilliant people. Kind of a funny story. Yesterday, I happened to be in New York, which I never go to. I was like buying a car through some of this crazy thing. I was like, took the day in and wait, actually, no, I can't say that because I faked sick to go do this. I can't say yesterday. Recently, I found myself in New York, you know, buying a car, and I was at the dealership, and the guy's like, he's looking at the paperwork, and he's like, "You're from New Hampshire. What do you do up there?" That's what he said. And I was like, I don't know. People go skiing and there's hiking and stuff. Like, I gave him the answer I think he wanted to hear. I told him I was chopping wood the other day for fun, and he was like, "So you chop wood for fun? That's what you do in New Hampshire?" I was like, "Oh, geez, you know." So I'm going to send that guy your show.
Yeah.
And anytime that people ask
look
about
at the
culture,
vibrancy here.
Exactly.
There's so many amazing creatives of so many different disciplines. It's astounding. I think you could never get bored exploring the well of makers in New Hampshire.
Yep.
You can. And, you know, I mean, this is one of the, you know, if people want to leave, by all means, you know, leave, but don't leave because you think that there isn't culture or art here, right? Because there is. And you're proof of that.
Right.
So.
Well, and one of the cool things is that there's a lot of folks that we've talked to on the show who were like, "Oh, this just like this thing was missing. And so I built it."
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, like don't leave New Hampshire because it's missing the thing that you want. Build the thing that you want here.
Because there's probably other people craving it as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Is that how Creative Guts got started? Is that what you did?
We can take turns. Our origin story is kind of funny.
I like that you snorted a little bit. I haven't had a single snort in all 40 episodes.
Oh, you'll
probably get a couple from both
several
of us.
snorts.
I want
here.
as many as we can pack in. Not even kidding.
Oh, that's what you can replace one of the buttons with.
There we go. That's nice and easy.
Could you press one of the buttons? Because they have this whole setup here. I want to not waste it. That's amazing.
Right.
Anyway,
So
Creative Guts origin story.
we started working together around 2018. In 2019, I wanted to. It's kind of two parts to this, but one is I wanted to be a voice actor, and I took a seminar that said one of the best things to do to get experience is to start a podcast. And at the same time, a little bit earlier, I was talking with a friend about starting a vlog documenting artists, visual artists who went to college for it and still do it 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, because it is a real testament to people that are pursuing their passions when they have a day job that has nothing to do with what they went to school for.
Yeah.
And it never really happened, never really panned out. Sarah and I became best of buds hanging out at work, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to start a podcast. And I burst into her office and I said, "Do you want to start a podcast?" And without hesitation, she just said, "Yes, I do."
I said, "Yeah, sure. That sounds great."
And why did you say yes?
It was perfect timing for me. I had this great job where I was working as the executive director of the Workforce Housing Coalition. And so I was sort of like entrenched in this like housing policy, community engagement work. I was kind of fresh out of grad school. And so my identity was really wrapped up in like my job and school and being a great student and being great at my job and like building my career. And I was like, wow, I really need like something for me that I'm doing where like I'm giving back to the community, but also like something for me that is not just like, I don't want to be seen as like this like sort of pigeonholed like I am a housing person, I am a policy person. Exactly. And so I was like, yeah, that's perfect. And I was in Leadership Seacoast at the time, and like we had just done Arts and Culture Day, and it was really great. And I was like, yeah, that sounds super fun. Like the arts is something that I care about and value a lot, and creativity, and like, yeah, absolutely. So I just said, yeah. And then it started.
Is that how you remember it? Like as her just bursting in?
Yes. Yeah. Well,
do you remember what you were working on in that moment? Like,
probably nothing. No, I'm just kidding.
Some spreadsheet.
I'm sure I was working really hard on something. Laura, I've known Laura for a long time, so I know this, but like Laura is a person who has a lot of like really great ideas and is really like too busy, and then shares those great ideas. And at the time I was like, yes, because I didn't know Laura that well. And now if she came up to me and was like, let's start a blah, 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 I'd be like, I don't know, Laura. It's going to be a lot.
You're like, we're still doing the other one.
Yeah. Maybe you should calm down a little bit.
Yes.
Do we really have capacity for that?
Yes, that's been the theme word of our friendship, I think.
Capacity.
Yeah. What about your capacity, Laura?
Because I think when you're super excited and passionate, you just feel like sky's the limit, let's just keep going. And, we could definitely talk about burnout and the realities of overcommitting and over shooting. And I think that's why Sarah and I have had such a great partnership from early on, because she can absolutely splash a little reality on my face.
Call you out.
I'm so sorry, but not in like a negative way.
No, I don't want to paint it in that light.
Have you two ever talked about this before? Is this like
no, for sure. Well, and at the time I didn't know that my friend Laura was like an idea machine. So
which has served me well. Background, I went to school for art, and I am an artist, a musician, a writer, a now podcaster, and I like to make films. Started a film festival. Like, I think I consider myself an interdisciplinary creative. And I went to school as an interdisciplinary artist, and so I just feel like you can wrap creativity into anything, and it's just the best. So why not keep doing it again and again? But you can also burn out and stress other people out, and it can be a lot. So, you gotta.
We are a great pair.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah,
that's been my. I've listened to 3 or 4 episodes of your show, and I'm like, these two just they got it going on.
There have been times too, like we've been doing this for 5 years now, where like life gets in the way and like things just kind of slip off our plates, and I'm like, hey Laura, I have stuff going on, can you handle this? And like we just pick up each other's slack because it's good. It's really good. It's really good. And you should get a co-host. It's good.
I've been thinking of like having a revolving, like there's a bunch of people who I would think would be fun to like, hey, come on, and let's go through our 100 favorite stories from the year and talk about that. Right.
That sounds fun.
I'm glad that you talked about, you see yourself as an interdisciplinary artist. Something that I find myself saying to a lot of my guests, and I actually mean it more for you two than anyone else who I've levied this characterization at. No, really, let's talk about Da Vinci. Okay. Let's talk about him, because you want to talk about like, the mother in some ways of like all creative. I mean, not really, everyone's innovative and different, but like the Renaissance person, right? I read this book about Da Vinci. Ken Burns just made a documentary about him, which was a very interesting departure. Like, he only ever makes docs about American history, except for now. He chose to leave doing that just so he could make a movie about Da Vinci, right?
Da Vinci would be so flattered. That's such a big compliment.
Yeah. And, in a nutshell, like what I love about him and what I loved about learning about him is that, like, in all these ways, he was somebody who did not fit into, like, we have this idea of who, the characteristics and the qualities that we associate with like the word genius or intelligence, right? People who are really calculating and, super duper rational and, analytical and maybe even a little cold or sociopathic in some ways, right? It's like when you think of someone who's just brutally super duper smart, like that's often how we think of them or characterize them, right? Or just like supremely gifted from birth in this different way. And like, he was none of those things. He was in all these different ways the last person you would ever expect to like have amounted to anything. He was, he grew up poor, he was gay, he was left-handed, like he had all these things kind of going against him. And then he just was a supremely curious person. And he was also really nice. Like he was a really, really nice, generous, jolly person, right? So it's kind of like somehow the opposite of those things has manifested into like our view of what intelligence is. And the other really cool thing of like his creativity is that no one, and this is I think why we respect him so much, no one ever explained to Da Vinci that, biology and botany and architecture and, the observation of the natural world and painting were supposed to be different disciplines. No one ever explained it to him.
Right.
They were just all the same thing to him. He was like, it's math, it's science, it's art. Like, what do you mean? Why would I put them in different boxes? So when you were talking about yourself as like, I am interdisciplinary, if nothing else, like you are living the Renaissance values, like more than I think people have an awareness of. And I'm a really big fan of that. And I feel like you two do that really, really well in the things that you juggle in, your professional lives and these outlets and your creative artistic outlets. So this is Renaissance energy and I love it. That's all I'm trying to say. I love it. I am a really big fan and we need more of it. So that's what I have to say about that.
No one's ever said that to me before.
I've said it to myself. It's on my website for Artful Harper, my art business. It says, I am a Renaissance woman.
Yes.
What? Yeah.
You are.
I mean,
really
it
are.
used to. I don't know. Maybe I took it off because I felt a little...
Put it back.
But yeah.
Yeah, put it back after
It might
this.
still be there. I don't know. But I haven't really dusted that page off in a bit. But yeah, I feel like there's just, if you limit yourself with your curiosity and your capability, then I don't know. That can be, I think, a pretty boring life. So
well, the mission of your show is to help expose and to help people discover their creativity, right? Mm-hmm. Is that appropriate to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I should also mention, we didn't even touch upon this, we're not just a podcast, we're a nonprofit.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So that's really exciting. When the pandemic happened, we had been releasing a lot of episodes, boom, boom, boom. And then it was kind of a screeching halt, like everybody and everything. And we sort of reassessed and discussed it. And it took a little bit to get there, but we decided that, we could achieve even more if we had a board of directors, if we had a nonprofit, if we could try to access funding to help some of these dreams become a reality.
Yeah.
Still working on that all the time, but we, became a nonprofit and we have a board of directors and get a lot more done. We've done a film festival. We have an event called Art Round the Room that's like speed dating, but for art mediums.
Ooh.
So folks who believe they are not creative and are not artists are invited to come and experience play and just experimenting
I
with
like
different
that
art mediums.
very much.
It's fantastic. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And lots of other events. We make zines and curate publications and we try to make a lot of opportunities for lots of different disciplines of artists.
Yeah.
Yep. That is another kind of fun part of our origin story, was that like this beautiful, expensive, gorgeous looking piece of equipment, we paid for this with our own money.
There she is.
And like we wanted to keep doing more. And I give Laura a lot of credit for this, for like her idea machine, that like we wanted to keep doing more stuff, but we couldn't keep spending all of our own money on doing it. And like, so this idea of like,
You needed a patron like Da Vinci. Like, he had a patron. He had tons of them.
Yeah.
we're like, maybe becoming a nonprofit does make a lot of sense, and it would allow us to like do more and access different types of funding and like make this like a real thing, and instead of like just a podcast and who was kind of throwing events on the side and like, ooh, let's do a zine, and we're like, what are we doing?
I know.
It was great.
Sarah mentioned she was the executive director of a nonprofit.
Yep.
I work at the Regional Economic Development Center, which is REDC. They're a nonprofit. I've been there 12 years. And then prior to that, I had worked at a couple other nonprofits. So we've really been in the nonprofit field a lot. And so it was kind of a nice, it took a little bit, I think, mentally for me to get there. But when Sarah pointed out that this is such a beautiful thing we're building and we want it to live beyond our interest or our lives, whatever, like we need to make sure that it's sustainable, because it is such a nice thing, I think, for the community of New Hampshire and beyond. So let's make sure we have other people on the team to take it on if something happens to us.
I want to toot our own horns too, because like we're a good nonprofit. Like the first thing we did was like, let's do a strategic plan. We did a strategic planning retreat, like created a strategic plan. We're going to do another one because our first strategic plan is about to expire. Like we do annual reports. We remember to file our tax forms to the IRS and our like form to the whatever office in New Hampshire Secretary of State. I'm like, that's right. Because I have worked with a lot of really bad nonprofits that are like, oh, we've never filed a 990. What is that?
That's another podcast. They're bad nonprofits.
That is another podcast.
Well, and to continue the horn tooting, I guess what I will just say about that.
I'm sorry. Is one of these?
Oh, it should
I don't
be.
think we have a horn.
I mean, that's
pretty good.
This is kudos for sure.
You're a great nonprofit.
But I think what I like to remind folks is that this is all volunteer run. There's no staff, and we all have day jobs.
Right.
That are full-time jobs, plus other, family and lives and other things. And so one of the greatest compliments I think we get is that a lot of times people don't realize that, and they think that we do this full-time.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is polished. It looks, I think it looks put together enough to fool folks for that. So that's wonderful. But, feel free to support and make that dream reality where we can have staff someday.
That's
when your co-founder is a graphic designer, it's easy to look amazing.
The art is pretty incrable.
Oh,
There's no
thank you.
that.
I take no credit for that whatsoever. I just tell Laura what I like and what I don't like.
I think one of our first annual reports, you were like, I want it to look fun and pretty and bright. And I was like, okay. And we did it.
I know how to interpret that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. Like, it does raise this interesting question of legitimacy, right? Like, both in the way that other people, experience or validate your work, and the way that, you experience and validate your own work, right? Of like, and whether you're doing art or anything else, but I think people, specifically with art, kind of run up against this weird conflict they have of like, oh, what I'm doing, it's not real, or it's not impressive, or it's not serious unless I'm monetizing it somehow, right?
Yep.
So like you talk to more artists than anyone ever. So like, what are your opinions on that? What's your experience talking to people about that? Or even your own views, right? Like there's the meta question of you are making the art of Creative Guts, the organization, right? Yeah. So tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, I think a big through line with almost all of our interviews is imposter syndrome, which I think is what you're pointing towards. And I think it's just a universal fact that most people at some point or another feel like they don't fit in, or they're not doing it right, or they're not subscribing to the order of what should be.
The dogma.
I think the creativity of it is what we have been talking about a lot, right? But it's also the guts of it. And I think that's part of where this idea came from, was celebrating people who have the guts and the tenacity to put it out. And, look, there's a painting, the world's going to look at it and judge it, and that's okay. But we also really value creativity in itself. So if it's just for yourself, that's wonderful. That's still just as valuable. It doesn't need to be for social media likes. It doesn't need to be to impress your parents, your professors, whomever. Yeah. It's really about, feeding your own emotional needs.
Yeah.
And it's such an important part of expression as a human being. So, we have lots of folks who are like, oh, I'm not an artist, I just do it on the side. And it's like, got news for you, pal. You're an artist.
Yeah. What's so bad about over?
Yeah.
This part of you is legitimate, but the side is somehow not a part of you. Like, what do you mean by that?
I love when people are like, oh, I don't do any art, but it turns out that like they do like garden and cook and sew, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not really creative. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, the thing we hear a lot is, or especially I did when I had a studio here, people would come in and be like, you're so talented, and I couldn't draw a stick figure. And to what I would like to say to that is, it is not talent, it is time. Behind every creative person and any piece of art that you see, there's a bunch of time there where someone took to receive an education conventionally or unconventionally, and then practice their butt off. It doesn't just, in very rare cases does it just manifest.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I can speak to that a little bit. I'm a musician, I mean, you know, the podcast show I do, I think like we talked about this a little bit. I think that's an artistic thing, trying to curate a more optimistic view through a combination of, you know, information and stories and people. Right. But, you know, on a more traditional sense of art and creation, music is really important to me. I've been a percussionist, you know, almost all my life since I was 11.
We didn't even get to talk about that on the show.
I know.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was just thinking that too.
No, I'm sorry.
Well, and we're not talking about the accordion right now. We're talking
we're
about
not.
your.
Yeah, no, that's why you asked what's new. You know, I'm already good at the drums, but we're good enough, rather, right? Like I can sit at it and enjoy it and express myself doing it. And you know, people always ask, they're like, "Oh, did you just like you know how to do it?" I was like, "No, I wasn't one of those kids hitting pots and pans and stuff, and I never had like an inherent sense of like, this is where 2 and 4 are, right? Like it was taught to me and I remember not knowing it. And then I, you know, now know it's like, it's harder to remember. I no longer remember what it feels like to not understand rhythm in music. But like, it's a thing you can learn. People are like, oh, I got 2 left feet. I can't dance. Or I never know what the beats. I'm like, give yourself like, you just haven't put in the time or had the opportunity to be taught. Right. So that's me. But, Sarah, do you have any like creative outlets? I mean, the show's obviously a great one, but you know, I've heard a little from Laura.
The show is a great one, and it's been a total joy to be able to like get to know the arts better over the past 5 years of doing this, and to like get to know people in the arts. I actually want to go back a little bit to the imposter syndrome, because I was reflecting recently. I don't know if you know this, Laura. I have had, especially now, but even in the beginning, I have had almost no imposter syndrome with Creative Guts. And I think part of it is the medium. Something about it being a podcast that I cannot see the listener. And in my head, I think my like coping mechanism is that there is no listener. Nobody is listening.
I think no one's tuning in.
So it doesn't matter what we're saying. And it makes it really easy to be just like sort of comfortable.
Because we're 2 friends having conversation with a new friend.
That's right.
That's how it always feels.
Yes.
I like that.
But yes, so to your question, like I have always considered myself creative. I've never really considered myself like an artist.
Yeah.
But I've always like dabbled in lots of little things. Like even like as a kid, I learned how to sew and I did a ton of sewing. And then like in these kind of most recent years, I'm talking to people and they're talking about whatever cool thing they do. And I'm like, I kind of want to play with that. And so like I have played with like printmaking over the past 5 years. I've played with like cross stitch and embroidery. I've played with like those really goofy jelly plate things that you like paint on and then put stuff on them to like leave texture. It's kind of hard to like get something really good out of it. Yeah. So like I've sort of like played with all of these things, and part of it is Creative Guts. Like I can give a lot of like credit back to that, to like sort of giving me just kind of like a, hey, you should try this thing. And I did, and it was fun. So
yeah. Are there any examples of, you know, people or guests or experiences you remember that like, I don't know, really inspired or encouraged you or changed your view on like an art form? Like, God. Or even just like a better version of that question is like, tell me about some of your favorite experiences that you've had on Creative Guts, or some of your favorite people that you've talked to.
Really
I know, that's such a hard question. I always have a couple that come to mind immediately. I'm like, yeah, I remember that episode, like our interview, and some of them I like don't remember why I liked them so much, but like our interview with Emmett Soldati, like cracked me up. It was like one of our funniest interviews. One of my favorite bloopers to date was Emmett Soldati's episode. But then like I think of sort of some of the ones that I remember because of like they were serious or vulnerable or really inspiring, like our interview with Samaya Kashi, who's a photographer in Concord. So I have kind of like, this is funny, when we were interviewing you, I thought of Jason Moon a couple times, who's like a reporter with NHPR. And one of the questions that we had asked him was like, he's kind of working with content that's sad and hard, and one of the questions we asked him was like, you know, if you ever get too emotionally drained by this work you're doing, you know, what's your career going to be? And he had an answer immediately, because this is a thing that in the office they talk about.
Wow.
Like when this work totally just emotionally wipes us out, what are we going to do next? And I was like, we don't have to ask Andy that question, because what you're doing is so positive and like, you know, and they're both important, doing this sort of both of parts of these like news, positive news, negative news.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I have the advantage, I think, of, again, it's more of Granted, Goodness is more of a creative outlet. Like I'm
Yeah.
not being paid to do actual journalism.
Right.
And I rely on, I use stories from NHPR all the time. Like
Yeah.
I don't publish anything original other than my interviews with people. But, the curation of stories is like that, I think I'm proud of my ability to pick them out and put them together as part of this tapestry of, hey, here's a view of this place that you maybe haven't heard before, right? And that you're probably not used to, because again, everything is so incentivized to be like, oh, how do we get you to look at this for as long as possible, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, I want to run away from that. And it's a creative exercise, right?
Yep.
At some point, I would love to talk to like an actual journalist, because they would
Yeah.
have some I'm actually going to. I'm going to have some interesting people coming on the show, but
That sounds super fun.
so a question that I really wanted to ask the both of you: why does it matter that people are like more creative? Like why? Why? I have a view, but I want to know, why should people be more creative? Why should they care? No, seriously, like if someone's like,
Oh, yeah.
hey, look, I'm a working parent and, I'm busy. I got my job. Like I doodled in art class and that was cool, but like, I don't have time to do this. Like, what do you say to people like that who think of art as a sideshow or something that isn't really necessary to having a full human life?
Well, I sort of touched upon this, but it is such a vital part of being a human who can express themselves. Understanding your own emotional intelligence and diving deeper into anything that you have to work through. There's a reason that a lot of therapy can include art, because it is such a big part of that. But it's also it's fun. It's a connector, for that mom who's working, when she can carve out time to maybe make art with her child, like Brandy Patterson does with her son. And I believe her husband is a drummer. And so their child will experience drumming and painting with their creative parents, which I love. It is such a big bonding thing. Like Eric Gold does these community art projects with everybody doing a tiny piece of a segment of a face and putting it all together.
Yeah.
And it is just such an important part of experiencing a new thing with other people around. But even if you're doing it for yourself, I think you can be introspective and you can also look at and see what's out there for creativity to influence you. But at the end of the day, it makes your life far more enriched. And we've talked a lot about practicing art, but just being an arts appreciator, I think, is an important component too. If you feel like you're not always practicing or don't know where to start, just experiencing arts in our communities, it's an economic driver, and it's what makes New Hampshire so vibrant along with our nature. So I think that's my spiel.
I think creativity is something that we sort of take for granted or underappreciate. If you've been thinking like, what moment in your life that you're sort of not exposed to creativity? Like if you go to the grocery store, there's music on. I guarantee it, And so like you're always kind of surrounded by something creative that someone made. And so sometimes I think when people say that, I tend to think that they're thinking that we're telling them that they have to like become a painter or they have to draw. And like, we're not saying that.
You don't have to show a soul.
Yeah.
You can just
you don't have to like become a visual artist, but like if you have something to do with your hands and it's tactile, like I think somebody doing art, or like I play with Play-Doh with my kid all the time. Like that is such like it's a creative, it's tactile, it's bonding, it's connection. And like it's not like I'm going around and being like, oh, I'm an artist, I do Play-Doh with my kid. Like we're not trying to convince you that you have to be like a capital A artist,
Right.
but like just know that there is creativity all around you and like take the moment to like appreciate that.
And if you think about mindfulness and how that can play a part in your life, there is a moment of Zen that a lot of artists and creatives in general talk about in the act of actual creation, where everything is sort of zoomed in and zoomed out at the same time, and you just are in this flow.
Yeah.
It's a flow state, and it's just such a powerful and wonderful feeling, and I think you get a huge sense of accomplishment and peace within from that.
I'm there right now.
I love that.
You're here. You're in the flow with me.
Yeah.
This is a Zen experience.
And Also, I'm sorry, I could go on and on and on. You're asking
No, you should.
amazing questions. But if you are creating for maybe a purpose beyond your own self-expression for yourself, there is so much social change and connection and fighting the isolation that a lot of people feel around mental health or social issues or something negative that's in the news, climate change, something you can change minds, your words, your voice, and however that you express it has power. And even in doing that, whether or not you change minds, you are doing your best to make it a better place.
Yeah. I'm going to selfishly, I love everything you just said. And I'm going to selfishly share a little bit of why I think what you're doing is so great and so important. People, the ethos of my show, right, is people solving or working on hard problems in around New Hampshire, right? And I think yours is, it is underneath everything. It underpins everything. Two of my favorite quotes in the whole world, and I'm going to, mess up both of them, but the truism will shine. One is, a friend of mine always says it. I don't remember who said it, but I'm just going to say it. We don't sing because we're happy. We're happy because we sing. Mm. Right. And it's like, it's exactly what you're talking about of, this is what it means to be a human being, right? You can have an interesting discussion about like elephants who paint and stuff like that. That's a whole thing we could go down. I don't mean to, you really could have like a very metaphysical debate about like, is art inherent to humans? And it's like, I don't know, maybe it's a matter of perspective, but really, like the creation and doing things that are unique and different and original is like, that's to me, the essence of like, it's a blessing that humans have, right? And that we can fit into this environment and have a relationship with it. Anyway, so like that, the art being just something we do, something that's a part of our nature is like a very important thing to me. And the other quote that, to me dovetails nicely for why I love what you're doing is, there's this wonderful place called Alnoba. Yeah. The guy who founded it, I'm forgetting his name, but
Adam Lewis.
Yeah. I saw a video of him once and he said something like, he was giving like a commencement speech or something. And he was saying to people all the time, everywhere, the world is trying to put you into a box. Like reject that, like every way that you possibly can, like everything, or rather there's so much pressure for conformity and for, to be uniform and to be the same and to not stick out and to do all this, stuff. And it's just like, that was the essence of his message to people of like, just fight that in every way that you can. And like, that is the number one most important step that people can take of like, what do you think of the world? Do you like it? Okay. Do you want us to be better? How do we begin? Right. And like, that's step one. And so it's like, anyone who listens to your show, it's fun and it's silly, but it's also like deeply serious in my view. Like all our problems, there are so many of them in my view, are downstream from like, we're just not thinking creatively enough about our own abilities as people, our capacities to work together, the things that we can imagine to be possible, right? Like it's all a creative exercise. Everything, exactly what you're saying. It's all invented. It's all made up.
Yep.
And some people are terrified when you say that, but like, it's actually a wonderful possibility. So
right.
Like, getting more people to be excited and engaged by their own creative abilities is like, what the hell is more important than that?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's what I think. So
Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
No, I totally agree. It's hard to articulate, but like I do housing policy advocacy and I consider my job to be deeply creative.
Tell me about that.
I
love it.
I struggle to put it into words, but it's like I'm constantly problem solving and maneuvering and messaging and figuring out how to talk to people about these topics in a way that resonates with them and matters to them and sort of gets the job done at the end of the day. And so like, it's funny because it is hard to be like, oh, I'm not, a graphic designer. I'm not a ceramicist. I'm not like a classically creative in a creative career. I'm not part of the creative economy, but like I consider what I'm doing to be creative and require creativity to do it well.
Well, yeah. And every artist needs a house to live.
God, that's definitely true.
You're super a part of the creative economy. The creatives have to live somewhere, except for maybe unless you're like Diogenes, that annoying Greek philosopher who liked to be naked and live in a barrel, and no one liked him anyway. What about this guy? He's a total freak. Shout out to him. Hope you're listening, Diogenes.
If you're listening.
Well, yeah, that could be a whole tangent in and of itself, because this is something we've talked about on the show before, where like we know that like affordable, attainable, accessible housing supports the sort of vibrancy of a community, because people like artists can afford to live there and like make the community more beautiful and more vibrant.
Right.
So they're related. They're related.
No, well, I mean, that's kind of another thing I wanted to dig into with you two, right? How do you think of, like your day jobs, right, are at not-for-profits or public, organizations, that are working on, substantive issues to improve the world. And, Creative Guts is about creativity, right? How do you see those two things as related? Do you see them as related in a way beyond just like, hey, this like is my life and my job and,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very similar to what Sarah said, where, the work she does ties together because of the vibrancy and people need a place to live. I think, the RADC helps find or provide funding for small businesses and also helps give them support. So I actually do a lot of graphic design and web design and marketing advisement for our small business clients. But we have so many creative businesses. And I think when we're talking about the creative economy, that is such a huge part that ties in. RADC also produces a publication every year called the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or
Very
the
sexy.
CEDS. Yes, another long name with an acronym, which you can find on RADC, and it primarily focuses on Rockingham County and a touch of Hillsborough, but it reports on the economic development, the infrastructure, the sustainability, the cultural vibrancy, and the resiliency of a community. And so we've actually been featured, Creative Guts has been featured in it because we are part of the cultural vibrancy, because we are basically a mirror kind of showing, or spotlight showing the world that. And so we were talking before about how it feels like we're archivists, like we're archiving what is happening right now in this state and a little bit beyond. And I think that ties in with, the economic development of the area. So I feel like I feel very fortunate that I have a day job as a graphic designer and a design advisor that I can use with those creative muscles. And there's sometimes a surprising overlap between the two.
Yeah. I'm not the right person to talk to about it, but both the city of Portsmouth and the city of Dover have worked with this national consulting firm that kind of looks at the economic impact of the arts on the community. And like the numbers are in the like hundreds of thousands to billions. Like the impact is just incredible because we know, say for example, people go downtown Portsmouth to go see a show at the music hall or whatever. They go see a play at Seacoast Rep. They're also going to a restaurant in Portsmouth, or they're staying in a hotel in Portsmouth. And so like, and I think of a lot of what Creative Guts does has like little like dribs and drabs of economic development in there. Like we value as an organization, we value like artists getting paid for their work. And so not only are we giving a platform where like a professional artist can talk about their art and share it with a wider audience, but also like we will hire artists for events. We'll hire, say, like a band, for example, to like play at one of our events, and like we're paying them. Or the artists who teach at like the Art Around the Room event, where like we're giving them a stipend to be there to like teach other people their craft. And so that's important to us. And a big chunk of our budget goes to artist stipends.
I love that. It's really cool to me that you brought up, the economic stuff, right? In there's how you kind of think of your impact of like, hey, this is the local creator economy. Your job is literally about like promoting economic development. And it's exactly the sort of like creative shift that I find so interesting, right? Like, particularly as someone who thinks about, human development and progress on these big issues. And like people, they call economics the dismal science. I'm not an economist. I'm sure an actual economist would be like, yep, this is why you should be depressed. But like people are used to hearing that word economy as like
just this thing that is like so large and confusing and probably frightening and all these, like, it's just not a very human oriented thing. Right. But I love the way that you two are talking about it. Of like, no, this is the meat and potatoes of like, people go to a show, then they get lunch, then they buy some art that they like, and then they like take a bus home. You know, it's like, that's what it is. It's just the sum of all our human interactions,
Yes.
you know, providing value to each other. And that's like, I think that's really cool. That doesn't sound dismal to me at all. You know, I wish we would talk about it more in the way that, you know, you two talk about it.
Yes.
I actually know, you know, one of the stories I you know, put in my newsletter for my favorite ones for the year is the economic impact of arts in the Monadnock region of New Hampshire is huge. It's in those like millions and millions of dollars. And, you know, they did a survey of people who like traveled to Monadnock from like somewhere far away.
Yes.
And it was like 90% of them were like, yep, I came here to Monadnock, New Hampshire for the art.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, are you kidding me?
Yes. Yes.
What are you doing here?
Yes.
But we know what they're doing here. They're doing, you know, they're appreciating all the work that you highlight on your show.
You will never find a bigger fan than me. I have the title as being the biggest fan of murals.
Yes.
A mural is so easy. If you have a building in a downtown, spend a couple $1,000s. Just trust me, just do it. It's worth the investment, and hire an artist to put a stupid mural on your building. People will come to your building. They will take pictures of it. They will post those pictures and tag you on Instagram and Facebook and wherever. There are people using Blue Sky, and they will shop in your business or in a nearby business while they are there. I have driven ridiculous lengths just to look at and take pictures of murals. Like, just do it. If you have a building, just put a mural on it. Just trust me.
I'm a big fan of that. I've always wondered myself, like ever since I was a kid, you know, like I mean, we should pay artists more probably everywhere for all the great things they can do. But like, but in the grand scheme of things, I feel like it's not like, again, not to be like political, but you think of some of the things that we spend a lot of money on as a society. And then it's like, what would it really cost if we just, you know, paid 100 artists to really beautify a town or a city? Just let them loose.
Just let them do it.
Let them do stuff. Let them go paint stuff. You know, it's like, I don't know. I'm sure people are doing it. I bet it's great.
Go to Nashua and see what Positive Street Art is doing.
Yeah, I want to talk to them.
They are awesome.
You should definitely talk to them.
They are amazing. And they are just making that, I mean, I don't want to say single-handedly, but they are leading the charge on making that town beautiful and exciting. And art doesn't have to be beautiful, but it can help for attracting folks, you know, but it can also have a message. It can also open up people's minds to new concepts or just being more familiar with something. And I think that's Positive Street Art. It's right in the name.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's like how Manchester made the decision in the downtown to hire somebody to paint all of like the ugly utility boxes.
Yeah.
Great.
Right.
Yep.
Why not?
Genius. It's like the return that they get on that for people feeling like great and maybe wanting to walk a little bit more or explore a little street corner and come into a little shop. Like, I'm sure someone has quantified it, and like I bet it's a very competitive return. Not that you need that. It's like the return is you just feel great about the place you live, you know, but there are real ways that manifests in terms of like economic value, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
Man, all right. We've been going for 45 minutes. I do want to extend the courtesy that you two extended to me. It's so funny.
It just really
It
flew
goes by.
Yeah,
we
it
didn't
goes.
even say anything yet.
I know. All right. Well, so, you know, what are some things that like you really wanted to talk about?
I would say March or April, every year we do this thing called the Tiny Art Exchange, where people from anywhere, New Hampshire and New England primarily, but anywhere in the world can create a tiny piece of art that is 5x7 or smaller. So it could be 1 by 1 inch. It could be whatever. And there's no cost. They just sign up online with us and we give them an address and they send it to them, to another person.
That sounds
and
awesome.
then that person sends it to another person and to another person. And so you have all these people making and then sharing it. And there's no point. It doesn't have to be seen by millions. It's just to brighten someone else's day. And I think this is also something I've seen. It's a wonderful opportunity for folks who are afraid that they're not really an artist to just try their hand at it and play and hopefully have a fun experience and then share it with another human being that they don't even know.
Yeah.
And I think for anyone listening, if you're like, oh, they're saying all the right things, but I still don't know if I could be creative, I mean, just doodle on a piece of paper and see what happens.
Yeah.
And join the Tiny Art Exchange because I think it's a great gateway. It's small, it's not intimidating, and it's really, really fun.
Every year I sign up, and then at the last minute I have a little like panic, and I'm like, oh no, I haven't made anything. What do I do? I'm not even sure like what medium I want to do at that point.
I mean, I've received some pieces that are cross stitch or threads sewn onto paper. Some people have knitted things. You know, it's creative guts for a reason. You can get, we're very loose with the rules. You just make something and share it with another human.
I once got a pen sketch of a rabbit on the back of a used envelope. And you know what I thought when I saw it? I thought, this person gets me. Like, you are recycling an envelope, a pretty one at that, and you drew a bunny, which I love. I have a bunny. I love bunnies.
Yes.
Like, yes, this person is obviously a listener of the show and totally knows me. I
did it
felt
just for you.
seen.
Yeah. I feel like if I tried to do that, I mean, I love everything you just said, but like I would sketch something down on paper, and then some poor person would get it in the mail, and they'd be like, this guy doesn't have it in him.
Yet. Whenever someone says that, I put
Not
the word
this guy.
yet at the end.
Like, I'm gonna pass on this stick
You
figure of a
should
dog.
do it and just send like either like a link, like a QR code, or like a USB, and it's like goes to music or something.
Sure.
I've always wanted to somebody to get like a little bit goofier with like the Tiny Art Exchange and be like, I'm gonna send a QR code to a video or whatever.
We can get weird.
If I
online.
receive
A photograph. You could take a picture of your accordion.
Totally. If I received a USB in the mail, I admit that I would not put it in my computer, but
Put it in Laura's computer.
in Laura's computer, in case it has a virus.
These are the files that I talked about, the creative files.
I'd probably put it in my husband's computer and just be like, sorry.
All of that to say, I guess, is that there is always space for anybody to be creative in lots of different ways. So the imposter syndrome or what society has told you about being in a box, like you can try your best to move beyond that and just take baby steps into exploring that world because it really is powerful.
I love that.
You should ask us the what makes us optimistic question.
I'm going to, but I just realized we haven't talked about New Hampshire at all.
Okay. Yeah. New Hampshire's cool.
That's usually my opening question. Tell me about like your relationship with the Granite State. Like, are you from here? Like you live around here, right? It's fine if you don't.
Do you want to start or do you
do
want
the
me to
show
start?
around here?
Either way,
Do you like New Hampshire? Like,
I love
let's
New
talk about
Hampshire.
it.
Yes.
Why?
You start.
I love New Hampshire. I will say that so I was born here and I have lived here my entire life. In fact, I have lived in a grand total of 4 different towns.
What are they?
So like Nottingham is where I grew up, and then I moved to Durham really briefly, and then I moved to Dover, and then I moved to Newmarket, and then I moved back to Durham, and then I moved to Newmarket again, and I am permanent in Newmarket. So I've lived in 4 towns total.
There you go.
And when I was in grad school, somebody made fun of me for that. And I remember thinking that was like a really petty and like invasive and like weird thing to make fun of somebody for.
Yeah.
It is.
Right?
Weird.
Right? Thank you.
You haven't moved
But, like,
5 towns, you loser.
I've been lots of places. I have traveled, and I have always thought to myself, like, I like this place, but I don't think I'd want to like live here. I wouldn't want to move here. And I was like, my conclusion is that like at the end of the day, it is not my fault that I was born in the place where like I belonged and wanted to be.
Yeah.
And so like my goal is to make New Hampshire better, and whatever's missing here be part of building it, or sort of foster a community of other people who are building great things here and not leave here. So I think I'm a lifer. I mean, I reserve the right to change my mind. You never know what
No,
happens,
don't
but
leave. We need you.
I don't think I'm going anywhere.
We want you.
I also have a 2.86% interest rate, so I'm probably staying forever
You got it.
in that one specific
You're good
house.
to go. Love that.
I was born in New Hampshire, and then when I was 2, my family moved to Western Maine. So I grew up.
Boo.
Well, I couldn't control that either, Sarah.
So different, Western Maine. It's like another country.
Like right on the border.
Yeah, you want to talk about the boonies? Like,
Yeah.
I grew up in a mountain with like no neighbors out in the middle of nowhere.
Who would live there?
Yeah, but I did have family down here. So I came down to the Exeter area and some other parts in the state maybe every other month, most of my whole childhood. And then when I graduated high school, I went to Chester College in Chester, New Hampshire, which is since now closed, but it was fantastic. And I had always knew I was coming back to New Hampshire. I just really loved it, especially the Exeter area. And let's see, I've lived in Derry and Manchester and Hampton Beach and Newmarket and Newfields and Epping is where I reside
That's
now.
so many more towns than you.
I know, like
And that's
double.
just in New Hampshire, not even the towns in Maine. No. But I love it here as well, and I can't envision myself in any other place, not even Maine.
Yeah.
I really,
Not even Maine.
Not even
Not even
Maine.
once.
I really think it's just such a, I don't know, it feels like home.
Yeah.
It just feels like,
Yep.
and I travel too. My husband and I like to go lots of places, and, nowhere else has quite compared. And I'm really close with family as well, so I just don't think I could leave.
I think this is probably true for a lot of people, but the pandemic shifted my mindset about a lot of things. My perspective is different now than it was in 2019. And one of those things was kind of like embracing, exploring this state. Maybe having a kid contributed to this too. Exploring this state as if I were a tourist. Like, what are all the coolest, most fun things to do in New Hampshire? And I'm just like checking off all of them.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to hike every single mountain in the entire state. Is that going to happen? Probably not.
You are a pretty active hiker.
Some of them are pretty obscure and like on private property and
well,
but I'll do my
within-
best,
within
you know?
reason.
Yeah.
The quest is the quest.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like I have kind of like a bucket list, and there's lots of other things on the bucket list, but a lot of my bucket list is like, this is my New Hampshire list of things I want to do.
Yeah.
So
And chug an entire bottle of maple syrup is on there.
that's the end.
That's how you can tell
Yeah.
a true.
I had maple syrup cotton candy last year.
Yummy.
It was good.
You can put it in anything.
Yeah.
I do really like maple syrup, actually.
Yeah.
For those of us who aren't watching and just listening, where the three of us are actually covered in maple syrup right now. Like there's another button on this fancy soundboard that, like the slime on Nickelodeon, just
Yeah, it drops from the ceiling.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. That is true. That is true.
It sounds like that.
Oh, can I say one other thing?
You could say whatever you want.
Okay. For those listening, you will see that we we are not where you usually record.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, where are we? What is this
We
place?
should acknowledge our
Thank
host.
I
you.
want to give a
I'm
shout
doing
out.
such a bad job
to-
of like, it's so easy to talk to you. My whole format's messed up. But yeah, this place is really cool.
We always like to thank Art Up Front Street Studios and Gallery, which is where we are now. This is just a small piece of the brilliance and amazingness of this place. Rose Bryant is the artist who founded this establishment. It's in Exeter, New Hampshire.
You're looking like
and-
she's back there.
Yeah.
Just trying to remember.
Rose, get out here.
I want to point out the artist, but what's Shannon's last name? Is it Hayes? Shannon Hayes. Rose Bryant over here.
No, that's not Rose.
No way. Who is that?
That's Gabby Grossman.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh. All right. Hold on. All right. Laura's going to do
It's
it.
a Grossman,
I'm
not
out.
a Hayes.
Laura's going to do it.
I don't know if they'll be able to see that wall. But
Yeah, I don't know what they can
that's,
see.
Ree Catrick, and we have Ann Kenny over here, and then Rose Bryant over there.
It's all really good.
Yeah. But I used to have a studio here. I don't currently, but Rose has been such an amazing partner. She lets us use this space after hours. And just really supports the show. She really cares about what we're doing too. And she was our first guest ever on the show. So go back to our early episodes.
Oh God, yeah, episode
special.
2 of Creative Guts
Yeah.
when our sound quality was amazing. 120 Front Street, Exeter,
Yeah.
New Hampshire. Come visit. They're open, I don't know, 10 to 5-ish most days.
Yeah.
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 You can look up the hours.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think I should ask the question.
Okay.
No, I'm not
Oh,
going to say
this
that.
hype.
No.
This hype.
I was
no,
going to
go
say
for
something
it.
that I shouldn't have said. What makes either of you or both of you optimistic about your work or the future of your work or anything? Are you optimists?
I am an optimist for sure.
That's good. You're in
I'm
the
a
right place.
dreamer, which is just I don't know if that's an optimist or not.
It's
It
like
is,
a,
but
it's
it's
a
like
subclass. Yeah.
it's not necessarily a healthy optimist.
No, I like it.
So I've actually been asked this question before. And well, technically they asked me what gives me hope, but same difference, I think. So my answer then is the same as my answer now, which is young people. And So we recently on Creative Guts, we interviewed two people who were in high school, Shayla Gherkin and Hazel Tompkins. They're both high school students who are poets, and they're part of the student poet laureate group. And talking to them, Laura and I have done a little bit of work with high school students at Exeter High School, and I have given a presentation every semester to UNH students, and I'm a little bit afraid of young people. I'm just worried that they're judging me and how, what's the word, chuggy I am as a millennial.
See, I don't even know what that means.
Probably chuggy to say chuggy now.
It's probably out, yeah. Chuggy is definitely out.
I wouldn't know. I'm out.
Just a little like cringy elder millennial nonsense. But young people give me so much hope. Like they're mad and they're smart and they're reasonable and they're creative. And maybe we were all like this when we were young, but like talking to Hazel and Shayla made me think like, if I was that cool when I was young, I definitely don't remember. Like they're they're going, they're gonna make a difference. I'm totally sure of it. And like, I think millennials dropped the ball a little bit on like changing the world, and now like we're kind of relying on Gen Z to do it. And who knows, maybe Gen Z will be like, all right,
we
Gen Alpha,
a little time.
We're not dead yet.
I would be prepared to argue against that statement for what it's worth, but that's my bias.
That's not a positive statement.
I know, sorry. Yes. So anyways, young people give me so much hope.
Yeah. Not that, yeah, I like that. And just to be clear, my content, would not be that it's not positive, but rather that I would wager that there has been more progress on hard issues than you may even know. And that's like, to be conspiratorial, that's like not an accident, like you wouldn't, there's not a big, beautiful graph up there being like, whoa, here's cancer mortality of the last 30 years, or here's, suicide rates for the last 30 years, or here's murder. Like there should be, and there are. And when you look at this stuff, it's like, whoa, even one's not great, but it's really good, or it's better than it used to be, right?
I know this is literally what you're doing with Granite Goodness, but like, we should really share more of that.
There's a website. It's called Our World in Data. You can look at any of this stuff.
It's amazing.
And it's like, you want to talk about young people. This is what I love about the kind of the progress journalism movement is like, it's very diverse. It's people, all nationalities, all like backgrounds. But the big mother website that is just like, if you want the equivalent of like a football scorecard, for like, how's the human race doing on everything you can imagine, right? That's worth measuring. They have it. They've looked at everything and they put all this information online. It's totally public. It's totally free. It's this thing that's like put out by Oxford University or whatever. And the whole team behind that website, Our World in Data, is like a globally diverse group of like young people, or like relative, like they're all millennials, they're in their 30s, they're all super educated, and like they just dug in all the stuff and they're like, we need to make this accessible for everyone, everywhere, for free, forever, so that they can understand the progress we've made on hard problems and how to make it better, So it's like, you are so right when you talk about, the young people, they're out there, they're doing it. And I agree. I want to hear your answer now, Laura.
Well, Sarah and I are often on the same wavelength, so I literally was preparing an answer that was very similar, except it was a different young person that we've interviewed. But I'll move away from young people in a moment. But Owen Simoes is a young interdisciplinary creative who has done many, many things. He's such an impressive kid. But he recently just turned 18 last year. And in doing so, he started a podcast called Youth in the Booth that is about civic engagement and learning about what goes into going into his first election and civil discourse around politics. And his curiosity and enthusiasm and passion gives me so much hope that in young people. So it's ridiculously amazing how we are on the same wavelength. But
let's get him on the show.
And he's amazing. You absolutely should. He flips furniture. He's an interior designer, and he just turned 18. Like, it's amazing the stuff that this young person gets up to.
He was on like Good Morning America when he was like 10.
Yeah.
Like, he just
for his furniture flipping and
he came out of the womb like ready to rock and roll.
I know those types.
But I guess
I'm on the syrup chugging. That's what I was doing when I was 10. Eating clay and eating syrup.
I think the other thing that gives me hope and optimism are all the amazing people in New Hampshire that are doing community building around creativity. So we mentioned Positive Street Art, Mosaic Art Collective in Manchester, Pillar Art Gallery, the Seesaw Gallery in Manchester,
Rochester Museum of Fine Arts.
Yes, them,
Queer
absolutely.
Elective, yeah.
There's just N Squared Dance.
Yeah. There's so many.
I mean, go to creativeguts.com and look at the list of people on the homepage, and chances are you will see like someone who is just changing the world in New Hampshire. And that's I think just talking to the folks that we talk to really gives me hope. And we have interviewed over 120 creatives on feature episodes. That doesn't even include montage episodes where we've done mini interviews.
Yeah.
But of those 120, like most of them I have become friends with. Like, so in my adult life in the last 5 years, I've made 100 new friends. And that gives me hope too, because I think it's hard to make connection at a certain point in your life if you're not going out and engaging. And I hear that like, oh, I don't know where to meet friends or find friends. And I think if you have a curious mind, a creative mind, and you just put it out there, you will meet folks. And I think community is what gives me hope.
Oh, I love that.
That is beautiful. Well done, Laura.
Everything you just said.
Thanks for pushing that button, Sarah.
It made me realize that it's really hard not to be optimistic when you do what we do.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. No, I mean, one of the tenets, or one of the beautiful things that I feel like, I get out of my work, and you two, the same thing, I imagine, right? Is that like, you get this sense of like, we have everything we need, like we have everything we need to really like, I mean, solve everything is like a very aggressive and bland statement, but there are so many people doing unbelievably creative things, and it's just like, they're doing it with what they have, where they are. Right. And, your example of like, social, like people's social lives even, right? Like that's a big contemporary issue that, everyone who, experienced the panini, right, can talk to. And I think a lot of younger people, they do struggle with it of like, oh, I don't really know how to meet people. And you're like, I don't know how not to meet. You're like, I have too many friends, Here's how I do it. Yeah. And it's a wonderful problem to have, right? Because it's like you put this energy out and people are attracted to it. And like, it just, you give it back, and it's a beautiful thing.
And if someone doesn't know where to start, I would highly encourage folks to attend multicultural festivals in their area when they pop up. They're only a few times a year in different locations, but the creatives, the performers, the artists, the chefs, everybody there is, and you get to learn about other cultures on top of it. So I think it's sometimes hard for people to know where to start. And I think that's an excellent place to start.
Yep.
I love it.
Sorry, I keep thinking of things to like.
No. No, sorry. I mean, we could be here all night.
I know, it is
really
true.
could.
They
We're
could
really
just
good.
be like a 13-hour. We could do one of those,
Yeah.
awful 8-hour long form.
Nobody would listen to it.
We would listen to it.
I don't even know if I would listen to it. My mom would listen to
Yeah,
it.
my mom would. We wrote
That's who really runs the podcasts.
Yeah.
The moms out there listening
100%.
to their kids.
Thanks, Mom. All right. Well, you two have been very generous with me. Thank you for doing Creative Guts. It's a real blessing. You are Granite Goodness exemplified. And, I'm sure there will be many ways that our work crosses and intersects. And I'm like looking forward to any piece of that we can do. Thank you. Thank you both very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. It was really fun. Oh my God, I didn't snort enough.
Hey there, thanks for spending some time with us, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can learn more about today's guest and how to get involved with or support their work in the show notes. If you'd like to suggest a guest for the show or have any story tips for our Good News in New Hampshire newsletter, shoot me a message at hello@granitegoodness.com. Music for this episode was provided by the band Sneaky Miles, who hail from Newmarket, New Hampshire. Until next time, I'm the creator and host of Granite Goodness, Andy DeMeo. Thanks for listening.